I'm sure he'll have plenty of nice words to say to you. Ladies and gentlemen, over to Duncan. What's that, drinks are on you?
Well, good evening everyone, and thanks to Andrew for his kind words. Well, it was a good evening until he stepped up. I know that's what you're thinking. I must ask you to bear with me, as I'm a complete and utter novice at this kind of thing. Yes, we know, just get on with it, will you? But anyway, before I set out to completely embarrass my good friend Andrew, let's get some introductions done. And firstly, on Andrew and Carolyn's behalf, I'd like to thank our lovely bridesmaids again, Andy and Kelly, and maid of honour Bev, and their loyal assistant, Flower Girl Leonie. Thank you also to the ushers, Andy and Robin, for making sure the task of telling everyone where to go didn't fall entirely to me, the result being that you're all here, rather than half of you being in Poole and the other half in Matley Bog. And thank you also to our video crew, David and Debbie, who are old colleagues of mine, and to Roy, our sound man. Yeah. And also the happy couple would like me to thank Jenny and her team here at the Bewley Hotel for all their hard work in making the day such a happy occasion. And last not least, my assistant Sammy, the ring bearer, who made sure the important part of the ceremony went well. Now, my father is a Church of England reader. Now, okay, you might not have a clue what that means. What it does mean is that he gets to take quite a few church services on a Sunday evening. In other words, when the vicar doesn't want to take them. Now, in my family, we know this as the graveyard shift. Now, I know I'm on last, but I couldn't possibly call speaking at my dear friends Andrew and Kazzy's wedding the graveyard shift, could I? Now, as you probably all know, Andrew doesn't drink alcohol, so I can't give you any drinking stories about him. If you want drinking stories, I'm afraid you'll have to do with mine. Make do with mine, following my beloved football club, Brighton and Hove Albion, around the country. Any Crystal Palace fans, get your booze in now. And I'll willingly elaborate on those stories if you see me afterwards. Actually, you'll be pretty bored with those as well. The most outlandish thing I've done following the Albion is to fall asleep on a bench at Preston Park Station the day we avoided relegation by the skin of our teeth. True, I did have a few glasses of Guinness and Carver inside me by then. Well, there are one or two from my university days, but let's be honest, this speech isn't about me, is it? So I can promise you I didn't leave Andrew upside down in a barrel of cider with no clothes on, though I did threaten it, the cider barrel bit, I hope you understand. However, Rodney, Andy and I did try and get him covered in soot a couple of weeks ago on his stag do, but the Bluebell Railway told us that would contravene their health and safety policy of spoil sports. Well, what you really probably want to know is how Andrew and I came to be good mates. Well, the London Bridge Railway Line and the London City Mission both have a lot to answer for. As you'll have gathered, I went to university. I graduated in March 2001. Anyway, after that I spent a thoroughly frustrating year trying to find work. You'll have heard of the stories of people sending in 100 applications and not getting a single reply, and people say, oh, that's a load of rubbish. Well, I can tell you, they're exactly true. Been there, done that, and the t-shirt became oily rags a long time ago. Apparently, or so a friend of mine who works in the skills business tells me, firms are not interested in you if you have a first-class degree, because you won't get into the corporate culture, whatever that is. Anyhow, by September 2001, I was getting very fed up with nothing to do. So, to cut a long story short, I used to travel in regularly to London Bridge from East Grinstead, which is also on my local line as well as Kazzy's. Approaching London Bridge, I used to see this funny brown building with London City Mission on the side, and it always used to fascinate me, and I wondered what this organisation did, which was the case with AJ as well, I believe, who used to visit an auntie in Dartford. They'd come up on the train, cross the bridge to Waterloo East and head out. And when they passed the funny brown building, it was the cue to look out for Tower Bridge, which is sort of still kind of exciting for a child. Like me, he wondered what went on in there. 20 years or odd years later, or 25 as it was in my case, there we were both on the inside looking at the trains going past, and the people inside looking at the building wondering what goes on inside. So there's another thing we've got in common. I thought nothing of this and continued to see this building whenever I went up on the train. And now, being a Christian, I felt very strongly that God had been guiding me all the way through university. And as I said, I'd had this time doing absolutely nothing. And I began to think he might be calling me to give him back something. And I remembered this funny brown building and wondered if LCM could do with some voluntary help. As it happened, the PA to the director who was in charge of volunteering said yes, she could do with some help. So I went in for a few days from the start of October, thinking it wouldn't last very long. And this meant perching in whatever cubbyhole I could find. So along I went shyly into this office, managing not to trip over a jumble of computer wires, stereo wires and every other kind of wire you could imagine, with scrumpium Western music blaring away while actually playing quietly in the background. I bet you can't guess whose office this was. One day, Andrew saw me staring fixedly out of the window and said to me, "Yes, that's a 375. That seemed to break the ice, and within minutes we were babbling away like true anoraks and became very close mates after that. Everyone was very friendly at LCM, but like anything in a new place, it was good to have someone I could relate to straight away. Well, I left after a few weeks and went after a government job, which I thought I'd got. At least that was the impression they gave. Typically, as you know, with governments, it didn't materialise, and so I came back to LCM again. The next year, the director's PA suddenly left, and I got promoted with virtually no notice to being his PA, which meant my days as a nomad were over, and I had my own office, or part of one anyway. But I needn't have worried. There was the reassuring clink of keys up and down the corridor, and you saw the undone shoelaces going past, so no, Carol, your warnings didn't get heeded. Andrew used to come in regularly to pay a friendly visit to the ladies in the publicity department with whom I shared an office. And being two blokes, we acted well like two blokes. Not quite the 13th Duke of Wyburn, but you know what I mean. And speaking of him, the fast show was another delight of ours. So meetings in the corridor would be accompanied by "suits you, sir," and such like. But we had to be careful, because shouts of "arse" and some of the other choice catchphrases they use, I don't think would have gone down too well there. Anyway, in any case, in time I moved on and did go to work for our wonderful government, but we've remained close mates, and the anorak messages still go back and forth. Frag 47 just went past our window, and so on. Even to the extent that I nearly sent a full staircase of people flying at Clapham Junction on my way back from a concert one night, as I tried to take a picture of a Class 37 on a freight to send to AJ. To say that their reaction wasn't favourable is an understatement. And in any case, we continued to pursue our anoraking after I left LCM, and we've been on 3 rail tours together. The first was great. It was called the 13 Counties or something, and took us around loads of lines neither of us had ever been on. So I thought we ought to do the same again in summer 2003. I think you might remember the one. The temperature got above 100 degrees in Gravesend. Well, I suppose Gravesend has to be known for something, doesn't it? Oh, it's Pocahontas' grave is there, isn't it? Off we toddled, and all seemed to be going well till we pulled into Altrincham. I've no idea what it was. Signalling problems, engine trouble, I can't remember. But we sat there, and we sat there, and we sat there, and so on and on. Now, I just hope nobody from here is from Altrincham. And I don't mean to disrespect the place if it is, but I have to say it's not the most enticing place I can think of spending several hours waiting in. You can only take watching so many Metrolink trams trundle in and out. Much more successful was the tour we went on in late 2004 to celebrate the retirement of the Class 86 electrics on the East Anglian Main Line. This included a successful attempt to beat the record time for a non-stop dash from Norwich to Liverpool Street. Having visited such delights as Clacton and Harwich Ferryport, we were ready for some fun, and boy did we get it. The train did the run from Norwich in 82 minutes, almost half an hour quicker than usual, to the astonishment of passengers waiting on stations en route. I believe we were doing 110 through Shenfield, and we were in the last carriage, which was wobbling about like a jelly on a warm day. And we were being thrown about like popcorn cooking. Too much leaning out of windows, though the views I remember most vividly were of Andrew's backside, hanging out of the window. We were accompanied by a group of very knowledgeable train drivers on this trip, and the railway even has its own funny handshake, or as we call it, flailing. I think there must be something about Christians, mission organisations and railways, because the finance director at LCM, Malcolm, is another anorak. David, who's been doing the videoing today, was once a railway chaplain, as was Paul, who led our prayers. And my godfather Klaus was a founder member of the Bluebell Railway and its archivist for many years. Look how many other Christians have been railway enthusiasts over the years, like the vicar in the Titfield Thunderbolt, Rev Audrey, who wrote Thomas the Tank Engine, and his friend Reverend Teddy Boston, who built a narrow gauge railway around the Rectory Garden at KB. Apparently it's quite famous, who the Fat Clergyman was based on. I won't ask you to say which one of you two thinks like him, but if you say it's me, I'll meet you in the car park afterwards. And when Andrew and Kaz came to choose a venue for their wedding, what should you find running behind it? A railway line, of course. Now, are there any negative things I can say about AJ? Well, let's not say negative, shall we say quirky and eccentric, as Andrew is the biggest geek I have ever met. Whenever I've been to his house or houses, I mean, he's been in so many since I've known him, I can't remember which one. He's always been at his computer, so much that I thought he was welded to it. Apart from today, do you ever see him away from his mobile phone? His current place looks like something out of Mission Control at NASA. There are more working computers networked together than our rooms in the flat. One time I came to visit him, there were these strange figures, supposedly meant to be people, but with elongated faces leaping around on the screen. This thing was apparently called Second Life. I thought, well, I have hard enough time getting through my first life, so getting AJ to pay you any kind of attention or get a word in edgeways was like trying to get blood out of the proverbial stone. Well, now he's got Carolyn. I was hoping that she might bring him back to normality, though as he mentioned, he's got her playing World of Warcraft, so I don't think there's any hope of that. Saying that, though, I must say that Andrew and I are still really great friends, and I count him as being just about my best mate. I mean, who else would come over with a spanner and screwdrivers to his mate's flat on a Sunday afternoon to demolish a bed for him? And my brother used to tell our dad, "Father, there's no DIY in your DNA." Well, I'm afraid that gene went straight down to me, so it's great to have a mate with practical skills. Now, it wouldn't be fair if I was just to drone on about Andrew, would it? What about Kaz? As you know, Andrew's taken a bit of time to get his girl. Now, he's not the only one. Some of us still haven't got there yet, and we're in our 40s. And those of us who are in that boat tend to look at Lonely Heart columns from time to time. Yeah, I know they're all online now, but that just shows how long I've been looking for them. What do they always ask for? GSOH. Now, call me thick, but I could never work out what that one meant until I worked in the government, where everything, literally everything, is letters put together, presumably to baffle you lot. What else is usually there? Yes, you've guessed it, in nearly every case, no train spotters. Yes, we really are. That's sad, apparently.
Don't know what they're missing.
Clearly, Andrew's found the exception to the rule, and so here we are today, and I'm sure he's made an absolutely wise choice, everybody. Little did I know, however, till I went for lunch with Kaz and her family, that Rodney's a fellow anorak. I think it must be in the genes. He even knew more than the guide from the Bluebell Railway who showed us round 2 weeks ago. And as AJ told us, he first met up with Kaz at London Bridge, so railways even played a part there. Now AJ's found himself a wonderful girl. And I must congratulate him also for finding someone who lives so conveniently close to me. Kaz's family live at Horn, which is only 10 or so miles from my family house at East Grinstead. Now I first met Kaz on a Saturday morning at the Gardener's Arms in Ardingly. If you've heard of the South of England show or Wakehurst Place where the Kew Gardens seed collection's kept, then you've heard of Ardingly, even if you think you haven't. And Andrew wanted me to meet her. And there was only time to grab a quick lunch because I was on the way to pursue my other obsession, you guessed it, football. Now, I don't remember that much about the lunch, other than it was your average pub lunch. The Gardeners has now gone posh, you know, the sort of place where they take a little piece of cauliflower, cut it into silly little shapes and put it in some unmentionable sauce, along with a few hand-cut chips, and charge you 15 quid for it. That's by the by, but certainly wouldn't think that's AJ and Kaz's cup of tea. I know Kaz works in the city, but hopefully she won't make AJ posh. I think she'd have quite a battle anyway. I then went for Sunday lunch a few months ago with the family, and it was just the sort of gathering I really like. None of your formal stuff where you feel too embarrassed to sit down or say anything. I felt I'd been there hundreds of times, even though it was my first time there. Just a case of find yourself a seat where you can, in between dogs, people, etc. And I soon felt at home, and it was quite obvious that Andrew was already long part of the furniture. And we went through to the dining room for the sort of roast lunch that we all remember Mother used to cook. None of your fiddly drizzle with a balsamic something or other, just a good old-fashioned English roast cooked by Kaz, though no doubt with Andrew's help. They say the way to an Englishman's heart is through his stomach. Well, I can tell you, Kaz certainly doesn't fail in that department, so Andrew will not lose out there. And Kaz's roast was definitely infinitely preferable to the kebabs, curry houses and fried chicken shops that surround both AJ in Brixton and myself at my London pad. So all in all, this was a lovely welcome to the family, and I know Rodney and Wendy will certainly give Andrew and Kaz a warm, loving hearth to go home to when London gets too much. With me being so close, they've no excuse not to invite me to Sunday lunch. Oh, I guess I'll have to reciprocate now. And I expect you've had enough of me by now, so I won't be boring you for much longer. But I'd just like to share with you a favourite verse of scripture of mine, which is for them. It's from the book of Jeremiah. It's chapter 29, verse 11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. Well, I'm sure everybody here would echo my hope that God will bless Andrew and Carolyn and give them many happy years together. And so now I propose that we all raise our glasses in another toast to Andrew and Carolyn. Andrew and Carolyn.
Okay, this wasn't part of the plan. The little bear.
Have you seen what his name is?
Trying to do. Grooming AJ. Hand-stitched German mohair. That's unusual. I'll put him down the front so you can have a look. Oh, thank you, Duncan. Well done.